This guy kicked out white colonizers, had his military trained by North Korea, tried socialism, then capitalism, printed a $100 trillion bill, defaulted on IMF loans, got sanctioned by the entire world, and lost all international relations.
Hey, yeah, no friends in the industry, my brother.
This is the story of how Zimbabwe replaced colonialism with hyperinflation. Before Zimbabwe became Zimbabwe, it was a British colony called Southern Rhodesia. The Brits came in the late 1800s and found their favorite thing: resources on someone else's land. The tiny British minority took control of Rhodesia's mines and most fertile farmland, leaving the local population deprived of anything valuable. As time went on, the locals grew frustrated and started forming guerrilla groups. The Soviet-backed ZAPU and the China-backed ZANU declared war against the white minority government. After 15 years of bush war, an election was finally held and the ZANU, led by this guy, took power. The newly founded Zimbabwe was on for quite a ride.
There will never be a regime change here.
Robert Mugabe wanted to unite the country, but first, he wanted an army that would be 100% loyal to him. So, he called up world-leading experts in dictatorial loyalty, North Korea. Thus, Robert traveled to Pyongyang and made a deal with Kim Il-sung to have his military trained by North Korean troops. And so was created the 5th Brigade, an elite special unit that went on to be used against political rivals in one of Zimbabwe's darkest chapters. Rebuilding Zimbabwe, Mugabe style. First, the socialist-ish chapter. Robert wasn't a textbook socialist, but he definitely liked the idea of the government owning, well, everything. Practically all industry became state-owned. Robert poured subsidies into education, farming, and his shiny new state companies. Mines, steel production, agriculture, all largely ran by the ZANU-PF. And for a while, it worked. Literacy rates soared, and Zimbabwe's farms became some of the most productive in Africa. It looked like the country was on track to be a regional success story. However, it didn't take long for the abundant subsidies to drain the state accounts. A few droughts, declining commodity prices, and increasingly inefficient management at the state-owned companies, and all of a sudden, Zimbabwe's debt was piling. Thus, insert the IMF, and Mugabe became a capitalist. Or rather, he had no other choice. Zimbabwe went insolvent on its prior loans, so the IMF and other lenders demanded structural reforms as conditions for new loans. This was the Economic Structural Adjustment Program. Cut spending, sell state companies, scrap price controls, open to imports, and devalue the currency. Robert signed on. Schools and hospitals lost funding, industries faced foreign competition, and the safety nets vanished overnight. The local industry couldn't compete with imports. Unemployment rose, industry shrank, and living costs went up. This is when the real spiraling started. The loyalty of Robert's supporters rested heavily on the prior well-paying jobs in the state-owned companies. Scrambling to not lose popularity, Robert launched an unprecedented war veterans payout package. All those who fought alongside him got a massive one-time payout and a guaranteed pension. There was just one problem. Again, Zimbabwe had no money. "Worries be gone," said Robert, and printed millions of new cash overnight. Then came Black Friday. In just one day, Robert released $4.2 billion into the economy for the veteran packages. Instantly, the Zimbabwean dollar lost 72% of its value. Then, on the brink of bankruptcy, Robert decided this is the moment for a foreign policy masterclass and sent thousands of its troops to fight in the Congo War. Immediately condemned by the entire international community, Zimbabwe lost almost all aid and trade relations. Now, an isolated, crippling economy, Zimbabwe was in shambles at the turn of the millennia. Another election was around the corner, so Robert went back to pandering to his old loyalists. His very original mission was to take back the land that the Brits had stolen, so he put his money where his mouth was. The state seized white-owned commercial farms and distributed them among Mugabe loyals, many of which had zero farming experience. Agricultural production collapsed. Tobacco, Zimbabwe's biggest export, dried up. And since the farm captures were by force, Zimbabwe got sanctioned even more.
So you have sanctions. We have sanctions.
Then, with mounting debts and no revenue, Robert resorted to another tried and tested trick. Bring out the printers. If you squint, you might just notice that moment on this chart. They printed millions, then billions, and trillions, and finally hundreds of trillions of dollars. Inflation got so bad that stores would raise prices throughout the day. Imagine queuing up to the cashier and seeing your groceries double in price by the time it's your turn to pay. In November 2008, Zimbabwe's monthly inflation rate reached 79.6 billion%. That means the currency halved in value every single day. Shops ran out of goods, banks stopped giving out loans, pensioners lost their savings. Teachers and public servants received their salary in food. The Zimbabwean economy crumbled to a halt. By the way, during all of this, Robert didn't stop spending. While the general public was struggling to afford to live, Robert was still balling out of control. Whether it was lavish birthday parties with a 200-pound cake or spending 80% of government revenue on salaries to secure loyalty, he did not care to be frugal. By 2009, the Zimbabwean dollar lost all of its value. Robert finally legalized the use of foreign currencies and the country started to dollarize. He still held on to power for almost a decade until a coup in 2017. In the end, Robert Mugabe left behind a legacy of economic collapse and political turmoil. And some pretty legendary quotes. Click here to watch another video of mine. Thanks.